You know, for literally thousands of years, we've been trying to answer one of the biggest, most fundamental questions out there. It's a question that gets to the very heart of everything. Philosophy, science, even just our daily lives. And that question is?
It sounds so simple, right? But think about it. How can you be absolutely 100% sure that what you believe to be true actually is true? What's the difference between just having a lucky guess and having real, solid knowledge? Well, today we're going to explore two incredibly powerful and really different toolkits that two great philosophical traditions came up with to tackle this exact problem.
So, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the Western quest to define what knowledge even is, and then we'll see how a huge crack appeared in their favorite theory. After that, we'll shift gears and look at the classical Indian approach, which is more like an engine for building proofs. And finally, we'll bring it all together and see how these two ancient paths can help us today.
All right, let's dive in. We're looking at two totally distinct traditions, Western philosophy and classical Indian philosophy. And they both developed these amazing systems of logic. But here's the cool part. While they were both chasing the same thing, truth, their methods couldn't have been more different. One was obsessed with finding the perfect definition, while the other was focused on building the perfect machine.
So, let's kick things off in the West. For centuries, the main strategy here was to try and define knowledge by creating a kind of flawless checklist. The whole goal was to figure out the exact conditions you have to meet to be able to say you truly know something. Now, there's a fancy name for this whole field of study: epistemology. Its entire job is to dig into what it means to know something. It's not just about, collecting facts, but about understanding the very structure of knowledge itself. And for a really, really long time, the go-to answer was this super elegant three-part formula called justified true belief, or JTB for short. And honestly, it makes a ton of sense. The idea is simple. To know something, you have to believe it, it has to actually be true, and you need a good reason for believing it. Seems pretty solid, right? Okay, so it breaks down into three simple pieces. First, truth. The thing you believe has to be factually correct. Second, acceptance. You personally have to believe it's true. And third, justification. You need some real evidence. You can't just have a wild guess. For literally centuries, this looked like the complete picture, the perfect recipe for knowledge. But, well, there was a problem. So, fast forward to 1963. A philosopher named Edmund Gettier drops this bombshell of a paper. It's only 3 pages long, and it just shatters this theory that had been around for over 2,000 years. He came up with a scenario that showed you could check all 3 boxes of justified true belief and still, intuitively, not actually know anything. And he did it with a simple little story. Okay, so picture this. There's a teacher. She has a ton of great evidence that one of her students, a guy we'll call Mr. No-Got, owns a Ferrari. I mean, she's seen him driving it, he dangles the keys, he's always talking about it. Her evidence, her justification, seems rock solid. So, naturally, based on all this great evidence, she forms a very logical belief. At least one person in my class owns a Ferrari, right? It's a justified belief. It follows directly from everything she's seen about Mr. No-Good. So far, everything checks out. But, and here's the kicker, it turns out Mr. No-Got was a total fake. He was lying the whole time, borrowing the car, the whole shebang. He doesn't own a Ferrari. So the teacher's original justification is actually false. However, in a stroke of pure cosmic coincidence, another student in the class, Mr. Have-It, secretly does own a Ferrari. So let's break this down. Is her belief, at least one person in my class owns a Ferrari, true? Yep. Is she justified in believing it, based on all that evidence about Mr. No-Got? You bet. So she has a justified true belief. But does she actually know it? Most of us would say, no way, she just got lucky. Her justification had absolutely nothing to do with why her belief turned out to be true. And that's the Gettier problem in a nutshell. It proved the JTB definition just wasn't enough. Okay, so while the West was wrestling with that mess, let's hop over to the East. Classical Indian logicians were playing a completely different game. They weren't focused on defining the state of knowing. They were obsessed with perfecting the process of proving. Their goal wasn't to write a definition for knowledge, but to build an unstoppable engine for constructing a logical argument. And this is their masterpiece, the Nyaya 5-step syllogism. Think of it like a recipe for a rock-solid proof. First, you make your statement. Man is permanent. Okay, bold claim. Step 2, you give your reason. Because man is not created. Then comes the crucial third step, the example, which connects your reason to your claim. Space is uncreated, and space is permanent. See that link? Step 4 is the application, where you tie it all together. Just like space, man is also uncreated, which leads you finally to your airtight conclusion. Therefore, man is permanent. It's a methodical, step-by-step machine for building an argument.
But here's the thing. Building a great argument was only half of it. They were realists. They knew that in the real world, people don't always argue to find the truth. Sometimes they argue to win. So they also built a whole system for defending logic, a fortress to protect it from bad faith and deception.
They realized that you have to know what kind of game you're playing. Ivada is the ideal, a respectful, good faith discussion to get closer to the truth. But then there's Jalpa, where the only goal is to crush your opponent, logic be damned. And then there's Vitanda, which is basically just intellectual trolling. You just tear down the other person's argument without ever offering a view of your own. By naming these, you could call out what was really going on.
And they had rules. Man, did they have rules. They came up with a whole list of what they called defeat situations. These were specific fouls that would automatically make you lose a formal debate. Things like bringing up irrelevant points, not being able to repeat what you just claimed, or just refusing to answer a question. It was a seriously rigorous system designed to keep everyone honest and on topic.
So let's pull back for a second. We've got these two powerhouse systems of logic. On one side, this deep philosophical quest for the perfect definition of what knowledge is, and on the other, this incredibly practical toolkit for how to build and defend an argument in the real world. They were both aiming for truth, just from completely opposite directions. And here's where it all comes together. The West was focused on the state of knowing, a passive condition you arrive at. Their big question was, what are the conditions for knowledge? Their tool was a definition. But the East was focused on the process of proving, an active thing you do. Their question was, how do you build a knockout argument? Their tool was a method, a machine.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? The West wanted to build the blueprint for the house of knowledge, while the East built the hammers, saws, and power tools you need to actually construct it. They're really two sides of the same very important coin. You need to know what you're building, but you also need the tools to build it right. Which brings us right back to our world today, an age just flooded with information and misinformation. And it leaves us with a really big question. Which of these ancient toolkits do we need more right now? Is it more important to have a philosophically perfect definition of what knowledge is? Or is it more urgent to have a practical, flawless method for building good arguments and, maybe more importantly, for spotting and dismantling the